Hello everybody, we are back. It's time for part 27. Part 27 of how to build a neck through bass. Today, for this installment, we're going to learn how I make a string nut. First thing we have to do is prep the area. I did a pretty good job of keeping this area clean during the fingerboard glue up. So what I'm going to do is grab a little razor blade and very carefully scrape and dig out the far corner where the fingerboard meets the neck wood. And I'm just going to get any of that last little bit of glue residue or even the oil residue from the oil finish that may have settled down inside that little crevice. It's not really a crevice, just a 90-degree angle. We want to create a very smooth, even surface for the base of that string nut to sit on and be adhered to with glue. Once I've done that, I have my little triangular file, take a flat edge on the bottom and very gently, very carefully work that area just to be sure everything's nice and leveled. I'm also feeling to see if there's any resistance anywhere, if there's any blockage as I slide that file back and forth. I want to ensure that it's a very defined 90-degree, very sharp corner angle that we're dealing with. That's looking pretty good. Now that didn't take very long. If you glue on a fingerboard, let's say it's the first bass you've ever built, and there's a bunch of glue, that's going to take you a lot longer. So don't rush through that step. Take your time. Clean it out, get it as perfect as possible, but don't overdo it. You don't want to distort the 90-degree angle that you've worked so hard to build into it. Alright, we're going to take a piece of diamond wood. That's what I use for my nut blanks, is diamond wood. I cut a bunch of this brown stock the other day, but I'm going to use the grayish color for this build. This piece will do nicely. Here we go. So diamond wood, if you're not familiar, this is a synthetic material. It does start off as wood. They take thin plies of wood and they are sandwiched together with some sort of resin that is put into a vacuum chamber. The resin basically absorbs into all of the pores, the oxygen is removed, then it gets baked in an oven and it cures into this graphite-like, super hard, very durable material. For a long time, this material was available in sheets from a company called Rutland Plywood. I would buy it and I would use it for my fretless fingerboards because it's just bulletproof. Rutland Plywood had a fire years back, burned to the ground and never reopened. And there have been some follow-up answers to diamond wood, diamond ply. That's technically what I have here. I would say it's not been as hard as the original diamond wood, but it's the same idea, same process they make the stuff out of. But I haven't been using it for fingerboard. That's why I cut it up and use it for the string nuts. So it's been working great for the string nuts, no problems there. So that's what we're going to do today. First thing I need to do is level the front and the back and then the underside of this. It's only been rough cut on the bandsaw. So let's go over to the edge sander for that. Just take a couple quick passes on that. Fourth today on this video. Where to put the stand? how that fits. When I'm fitting this, I want to get down and get right on the same level with the neck. I want to see the underside. I want to be sure there's no gaps. I want a nice flush fit. Whoops. All right, let's try that again. There we go. That's fitting nicely. What I'm going to do now is make some marks. I use a silver Sharpie on this stuff. First thing I'm looking at is right over the top. And this is going to be a side mark. Same on this side. And then, this is something I do completely by feel. I'm going to take this Sharpie, angle it down just a little bit, and I'm going to go over the very top of the fingerboard with the very the shoulder of the Sharpie right here. I'm going to mimic that radius on the front edge of this nut blank, and I'm going to use that shape to create the radius in the nut blank, mimicking the fingerboard. If you look closely, you can see that arched radius, and then there's the side marks. It's important that now I know this is the front, where that mark is. This is obviously the top. Nothing on the back. So now I know. So let's take this back to the edge sander. We're going to go ahead and chip the sides. This machine moves this job along pretty quickly. I use this edge sander a lot in my shop. It's become a very useful machine for a lot of things, this especially. So I'm now going to take off this portion and this portion. We're working on the sides. This goes pretty quickly. Check this out. We have it, roughed out. All right. I'm going to plug the charger back into the phone here. One sec. All right. Now we have a relatively rough fit, but it's on there. By the way, if you can't see the work because of the comments, take your finger and just drag the comments off to the side. They will move and you'll be able to see. Okay, so I'm feeling a little bit of extra material on either side. All right, so what I'm going to do is remove that material. Start with a block. right. That's 120 grit, and that moves it pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do now, I've taken off some of the super rough edges. Now I'm going to focus on one side. I'm going to start with the bass side, and keep in mind this is reversed image. Starting on the bass side, I'm feeling with my thumb. I want to create a very smooth transition from the nut to the fingerboard and the surrounding portions of the neck underneath it. Basically, I don't want to feel where one starts and the other one ends, if that makes sense. So I'm going to use these nail buffers. They do a wonderful job. That's getting there. If I drop this nut blank, it's very easy to pick it back up and figure out which direction it should go, because now the shape is roughed out into it. Once I have the shape defined on one side, I go ahead and put a shine to it. And I can feel that's very nice. I know you can't really see it. Now we're going to work on the treble side. I can feel some material hanging over, so now we're going to just sneak up on it and make it nice and flush. So this is removing about 1 millimeter or so of extra material that's just hanging off the edge. Just taking it down, taking it down. It's getting close. You can use these padded nail file buffer things. You can use a block with sandpaper, anything really that you can do it mechanically. You can use an edge sander or a belt sander. There's no set in stone way of doing this. This is just how I do it. Getting closer. I'm going to go ahead and take it down with this just to create a nice level flat side. A block will definitely do a better job of giving you a flatter surface, whereas a padded block foam, dense foam, it's going to be more prone to rounding things just by the way it passes over the material and the way it gives when there's any sort of resistance. All right, now we're going to go to this. There we go, that's feeling nice. Alright, at this point it's time to glue the nut on. Alright, now something I like to do after the nut is glued on, this just makes it feel super seamless, this is something I could do with an oil finish. I can't so much when there's a clear hard spray finish. But I'm going to sand this and make it even that much more flush. Just right along the side where the fingerboard, the nut, and the neck woods all meet up. I'm just going to give that a little touch on both sides. This is 220, and we're going to go ahead and go down the grit. We'll hit it next with 320. 20. Great. 400. If you're dealing with a bass that has a clear, hard spray finish, you have to be very precise when you're fitting a nut, because you don't have the luxury of being able to touch it up this way as I can on an oil finish instrument. So just keep that in mind. Scotch-Brite with a little bit of Howard feeding wax. That does a very quick polishing and reconditioning of the area, and it's good to go. Next step is to mark out the string slots. Now, there's a couple tools you're going to want to get for this. You're going to want to buy this from StewMac. Okay, this is called the string spacing rule. Basically, it has mathematically spaced out a lot of possible string slot width scenarios for just about any size nut you can imagine, whether it's for an electric guitar, mandolin, a bass, what have you. First thing I do is I'm going to map out where I want the outside strings, in this case the G and the low B. And the G is going to go right here. I'm just going to mark it with a pencil, and the low B is going to go right here. Whatever measurements you decide on for your own designs, if you're going to get into building, that's up to you. If you want numbers, I like to get about 4.5 millimeters from the edge of the nut. That just seems to give the string enough wiggle room along the side of the edge of the fingerboard to where it doesn't fall off the edge so easily if you do vibrato. Once you have those two marks established, you need to find the pattern in this string spacing rule that lines up perfectly with those outside marks. So the way this works is you have a set of upper lines and a set of lower lines. It's hard to show you here, but when you get the tool you'll see what I mean. But you basically skip every other line. So let's see if we have a match here. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little wide. I'm going to go a little bit more narrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little narrow. Right about there. No, right here. That's what we want. That's money right there. Line that up. Skip, skip, skip. There it is. Using a 10 gauge saw, I'm going to score each one of these lines. Being careful to point the direction of the saw towards the side of the tuner the string is going to go to. This is generally a straight line for me with my designs. If you notice that your strings are going way hunker jaw off to the sides, you might consider redesigning the layout of your tuners. Anything extreme as far as direction change of the string can work against you. A little bit of a splay out is not a big deal. I'm going to lay out the nut files. Alright, there's those. To start, I'm going to go ahead and start opening these little scored saw lines up with, this is a .032 inch. This is basically like what you'd use for a high C string on a 6-string bass. I'm going to open these up with 32. Just a little bit. Yes, I'm obsessive about blowing the dust off my work. It's the universal sound of any luthier. It's not like a tick or anything. Alright, those are clearly marked, opened up a little bit. I have a feeler gauge. This is one that I put together to accommodate this fret wire size specifically. And it looks like I did do a preliminary leveling on these frets, so that's good. I'm going to put this feeler gauge down, and I'm going to begin to use each file for its respected string. I give each one a slight roll side to side. That way, if whoever owns this bass decides they want to put a 50 gauge string on for their G, it'll fit. But the height is going to be correct. So I will slightly oversize each slot on the nut. That is intentional. And we're going to go down until we hit metal. When I hear metal, I'm done. I stop. All right, 65. All right, 85. I'm going to open this up a little bit with the 65. Same with the low B slot. All right, 105. As I'm doing this, I'm being careful to follow the back angle of my headstock. Not too much, I don't want to scratch the headstock. Now the 125. 125 I still roll because I want this person to be able to put as big of as a string up to like a 135 if they wanted to on there. So. Right, that's carved. Now we're going to fine shape and polish this string nut. To do that, I'm going to tape off in front of and behind the nut. 2 pieces on the fingerboard, 3 pieces here on the headstock. What I just did there with the coarse side is not only did I smooth this nut blank, but I also took the height down just a little bit. I do not want excessive sidewall alongside each string. Does that make sense? Sidewall is the portion of the nut on either side of the string as the string sits down in the slot. If anything, I want the string to only have no more than 60% of its height covered up by the nut. That means the top arc of the string is going to be visible over the top of the nut. That's just the way I do it. There are some other builders that do a very minimal sidewall style nut like that I have mad respect for. And doing a lot of repair work got me into a lot of it. I got to study what they did and saw what worked well and the results. And I've even had other builders that did an excessive amount of sidewall, and I did not enjoy the performance of that. So for me, I've always resonated with a minimal amount of sidewall on the string nut. Now we're just going to smooth that down and polish it up. My whole idea behind the way this should feel is that it should not hurt. That's pretty consistent with the entire instrument. Anywhere you put your fingers, it shouldn't be sharp. It should not hurt. I'll start putting a shine on this now. Clean out those slots real well. Let me flip this around so y'all can see what that looks like. Nice and shiny. That's what I go for. Alright, that concludes this installment of my series on how to build a bass. For the next part, we're going to put on the tuners and we're going to get string tension on this bad boy. So stick around for part 28. That's coming up next. Thanks for watching.